Over time, ancient civilizations gradually declined and vanished. Even mighty empires eventually decline, making way for the next generations. And so today, we are left with countless immense cultural heritages, holding many secrets still waiting to be discovered by humankind. One of these is the magnificent and majestic Egyptian pyramids. This architectural work has remained a formidable enigma throughout history, leaving archaeological researchers perplexed by its near-perfect precision. However, there still exists a structure in the world considered to be even more miraculous than any Egyptian pyramid we have ever known. Right here, Puma Punku. Since its discovery, this architectural structure has continually amazed the archaeological community with its novel findings. So what makes Puma Punku so special? What is so special about this structure that it makes the pyramids, which are majestic and intricate, seem like mere children's toys? It's a pleasure to meet all of you again in this video from the primordial universe. Puma Punku, a structure even more perfect than the pyramids. Let's explore the ancient city of Tiwanaku together. This land is located southeast of Lake Titicaca, 72 kilometers west of Bolivia's capital, La Paz. This site preserves numerous relics dating back thousands of years in South America. With an area of only about 4 square kilometers, this place nevertheless possesses a treasure trove of decorative ceramics, monumental architectural works, and massive, strangely captivating stone tombs. This helps Tiwanaku attract a large number of tourists to Bolivia each year. This city was first mentioned in the earliest chronicles of the Indies. But from that very moment, the city became desolate, without a single soul or any sign of life. In 1549, the talented Spanish historian Pedro Cieza de Leon embarked on an expedition to uncover the mysteries of Tiwanaku, which had not been documented in the books of that era. Based on the remaining traces, researchers have determined that the area around the city has been inhabited since approximately 1500 BC. And most studies concur with the hypothesis that Tiwanaku flourished between 300 and 1000 AD. Over time, the city gradually became the political and religious center of a powerful empire that lasted for 500 years. The stone in the center. Just by hearing the name, one can see that the ancients regarded that land as the center of the world. Currently, many scientists, archaeologists, and historians share the view that Tiwanaku is the oldest city in the world. In fact, it existed even before the legendary Lake Titicaca was formed. In the 7th and 8th centuries, the Tiwanaku Empire became immensely powerful and prosperous. Agriculture and cultivation also thrived thanks to the cool water from Lake Titicaca, despite the region's hot and arid climate. During this prosperous period, a series of highly valuable architectural works, both artistically significant and highly functional, were completed. However, Tiwanaku's dominance began to weaken in the 11th century and completely collapsed in the 12th. But why did such a powerful empire collapse so rapidly and mysteriously? The document records that tens of thousands of years ago, a great deluge submerged the entire city underwater. Perhaps it is for this very reason that the important vestiges of an ancient city have completely vanished. Time passed, the water level gradually receded, and only then did people suddenly realize with shock that an entire desert lay before them. Today, Tiwanaku is not only a historical relic but also a place where Bolivians make pilgrimages to honor their ancestors, as well as a site for large-scale religious festivals. A few hundred meters from Tiwanaku is the unique complex of ruins known as Puma Punku. And this is the central figure of today's story. When mentioning Puma Punku, many of us would likely find it to be a rather unfamiliar and novel name. It is located in the Bolivian Andes, a desolate region at an altitude of 3,800 meters above sea level. Witnessing the surviving ruins here, many cannot help but wonder, could this place have endured an incredibly devastating earthquake? Or perhaps a meteorite strayed to Earth and destroyed this structure? Perhaps it was submerged by a great flood. According to local legend, a people known as the Andeans once lived here. They were submerged along with Puma Punku in a great flood. Doubts about that great flood have been raised as more and more related evidence has been discovered. In the alluvial area of the relic site, many valuable artifacts are still preserved, including sets of human remains, personal belongings, and many other items. Traces indicate that the disaster occurred approximately 12,000 years ago. This indicates that Puma Punku was originally a structure built by a highly advanced ancient civilization. However, it was so severely devastated that it could not be restored, and now remains only in ruins. The architecture at Puma Punku possesses a unique character, having inherited the architectural essence of the ancient Tiwanaku civilization. Among these, the Akapana Pyramid and the two temples, Kala Satyaraja and Saptaranya, must be mentioned. This is the most representative and prominent structure in the entire relic site. Everything exudes an air of mystery, while being just as precise and sophisticated as any stately structure. Among the archaeological remains that survive to this day, the most impressive is the enclosing wall surrounding the central temple of Kala Satyaraya B. The wall was constructed from red sandstone blocks weighing up to 130 tons. But how could the ancients have moved those 130-ton stone blocks at that time? Even the nearest red sandstone quarry was 10 kilometers away from the site. Without any kind of modern machinery, how did they manage to do it? Surrounding the city, architectural structures were exquisitely carved from blocks of green andesite stone, sourced from the Copacabana Peninsula on Lake Titicaca. Like red sandstone, their mode of transportation remains an unsolved mystery to this day. One hypothesis suggests that these massive andesite blocks, weighing over 40 tons, were transported by reed boats across Lake Titicaca for approximately 90 kilometers, and then dragged another 10 kilometers to reach Tiwanaku. If it were possible to build a watercraft capable of transporting up to 100 tons, it would demonstrate the very high scientific advancement of that civilization. Moreover, people were utterly amazed by the meticulously and sharply crafted stones, as if they had been cut with a laser. The ancient stone blocks at Puma Punku are made of andesite, an extremely hard type of rock. It is believed that its hardness reaches a level of 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, which is nearly the highest level on this scale. In ancient times, with only rudimentary tools, there seemed to be no way to work with andesite rock. Even with modern technology today, processing this type of hard stone remains a significant challenge. So at that time, how did people process those stones? What technology did they use to work with andesite? The answer will most likely be revealed if we listen to the local legends of this very place. According to legend, in a time long, long ago, giants set foot on this world to help build the Puma Punku area. Thanks to their extraordinary strength, the giants could easily extract stones from the quarry and transport them to the construction site. Then, through the power of hair magic, the stones could levitate and stack upon one another to form a shape. This story may sound far-fetched, but what if it were true? What about that giant and the miraculous magic that can make rocks levitate? Could it be an alien race with their technology? Although it may sound unbelievable, ever since Puma Punku was discovered, humanity has never ceased in its efforts to unravel the mysteries of this place. From 1910 to 1945, based on geological dating studies, archaeologists speculated that the age of Puma Punku could be as old as approximately 11,000 to 15,000 years. The unique architecture of the Puma Punku ruins continually inspires researchers to explore the historical and cultural context behind this structure. The heaviest rock at this site weighs up to over 130 tons, while others also weigh anywhere from several dozen to nearly 100 tons. This is an incredibly impressive figure. Moreover, each building block was intricately carved, without a single flaw. Even with interlocking shapes and complex layers of intersecting cuts, the machined corners are flawless, without a single gap. The sophistication is also reflected in the intricately carved grooves on the stone and the uniformly arranged small round holes, each with a diameter of just 50 millimeters. In this area, you can see large rocks clamped tightly together with metal pins. What further amazed researchers was that these ritual vessels were made from a special alloy composed of copper, arsenic, nickel, and leaded tin. This is the most compelling evidence that the builders of Puma Punku were not only skilled in working with monolithic stone, but were also adept masters of metallurgy and metalworking techniques. According to the most plausible explanation, these massive stones were transported up to the plateau at an altitude of 3,800 meters using wooden rollers, ropes, herds of alpacas, and a large workforce. However, that is also completely impossible. Could the aforementioned technologies have been imparted by another species? In 2018, while studying rock samples from Puma Punku, Professor Joseph David Lewis once again discovered an anomaly. 4 steps made of red granite, each block weighing from 130 to 180 tons, along with smaller andesite blocks of complex shapes crafted with millimeter precision. This is entirely inconsistent with the technological capabilities of that era. As mentioned in the previous section, the ancient Tiwanaku people had only stone tools and no metal hard enough to carve rock. So how could they have built such a colossal structure? Additionally, Enisis stone is nearly impossible to carve with conventional tools, even when applying the most modern technologies currently available. Therefore, a hypothesis has emerged suggesting that these marvels are the achievements of a lost super civilization from antiquity, or the result of extraterrestrial intervention. Don't be too quick to dismiss this as science fiction. Look at this research to see how this seemingly crazy hypothesis is actually grounded. This is the Sun community. We invite you to listen to a few words about it. The Sun Gate is an ancient archaeological site, part of the Puma Punku monument complex belonging to the Tiwanaku civilization. Thanks to the solar calendar, the ancients were able to calculate the days, months, and seasons of the year. The sun column is crafted from a single monolithic stone slab, standing approximately 3.1 meters tall, 3.96 meters wide, and weighing over 10 tons. The reason it is called the Sun Gate is that precisely on September 21st, the annual autumnal equinox, the first rays of dawn always strike the ground at the very center of this rock. Various drawings and characters are also engraved on the gate. Many scholars believe they are closely linked to calendrical systems and esoteric astronomical knowledge from ancient times. How could something like this happen? How did the ancient Tiwanaku people accurately calculate the relationship between the pre-sunlight during the autumnal equinox and the position of the sun? In the book, The Random Phenomenon at Tiwanaku meticulously documented research on the motifs and symbols of the Gate of the Sun. Above the Sun Gate, a vast amount of astronomical knowledge is recorded, dating back as far as 2,700 years ago. And this knowledge is built upon the foundation that the Earth is spherical. It is hard to believe that, according to records, the belief in a flat Earth persisted stubbornly until long after that time. That means there must have been someone who saw the Earth from outer space, realized it wasn't flat, and then conveyed this knowledge to the ancients. This once again raises the question, did the ancient Tiwanaku people perhaps travel into space? At the center of the Gate of the Sun is an image of Viracocha, the creator god and supreme deity in the religion of the ancient Inca. He is regarded as the creator of all things. Legend has it that in the primordial age when the world was shrouded in darkness, Viracocha was born from the mystical lake Titicaca. The sun, the moon, and the stars were created from the island in the middle of the lake. He also created day and night by commanding the sun to move. Then, Viracocha created humans from stone. However, these humans were too foolish and crude, so he swept them away with a great flood. Instead, he used clay to mold humans as they are today. Finally, Viracocha disguised himself as a wandering old man to teach the ancient Incas fundamental lessons, laying the groundwork for a civilization. It is perhaps for this very reason that the ancient Incas successfully domesticated the llama. Perhaps that is precisely why they possessed such incredibly advanced technology, to the extent that they could create Puma Punku with astonishing perfection. And perhaps, we will never know who Viracocha truly was. Not only that, when examining the Sun Gate, researchers also discovered extremely peculiar prehistoric animal figures carved right on its edge. This animal has a robust, sturdy build, with somewhat coarse legs and resembles a crossbreed between a hippopotamus and a pig. In today's animal world, no species with such an appearance certainly exists anymore. But as soon as they saw them, the paleontologists immediately recognized the seemingly sluggish animal in the picture. Perhaps it was a gape-toothed beast, a prehistoric animal that went extinct long ago. Research indicates that the saber-toothed tiger existed from approximately 1.6 million years ago until 12,000 years ago. It was likely an amphibious animal, with habits similar to those of a modern hippopotamus. They were the most common hoofed mammals in the Americas at that time, standing about 1.4 meters tall. With a length of 2.8 meters and 3 toes, it had a low-slung body and no horns. However, they soon became extinct, and today, humans can only understand them through the remaining fossils. But why would the image of an extinct animal be depicted on the Gate of the Sun? A total of 47 details on the building's roof are carved with figures of beasts, their mouths agape. That mythical creature is not only present on the Sun Gate, but also see them depicted on many other ancient artifacts, such as broken roof tiles and some sculptures. The appearance of 2 extinct species on the Sun Gate, could this hold some profound meaning? Currently, we can only confirm that the first builders of Tiwanaku and Puma Punku saw these animals with their own eyes, rather than depicting them from imagination. This implies they either possess an extraordinary lifespan or a superior wealth of knowledge. Thanks to this, researchers were able to conclude that the construction of this relic site could be no later than the period from the end of the Pleistocene epoch to just before 10,000 years BCE. But the Egyptian pyramids were built around 2600 BC. Sumerian civilization, recognized as the world's earliest civilization, only emerged around 3300 BCE. The history of human migration to the Americas began around 10,000 years BC, while the exploration and settlement of Oceania occurred significantly later. So then, 12,000 years ago, when the world was still steeped in primitive ignorance, who exactly was it that created the magnificent Puma Punku and the Gate of the Sun? However, the Gate of the Sun is not the only place that makes one suspect the presence of an alien race at Puma Punku. You have just witnessed the Colossosaya architectural complex. The distinctive feature of Colossosaya, compared to many other structures, is that it has only a single entrance, despite the site's area exceeding 15,000 square meters. The pedestals within the temple complex are rectangular stone blocks and pillars decorated with carved patterns. Upon closer observation, one can recognize the extremely sophisticated and advanced construction techniques of the ancient Tiwanaku people. Many rectangular stone blocks were cut with perfectly square edges. When assembled, they form such tight joints that not even a hair or a needle could pass through. The intact walls indicate they were constructed perfectly parallel to the ground. It should be noted that the entire rock mass here consists primarily of granite and diorite. Their hardness is second only to diamond. This brings to mind laser manufacturing technology, a technique that modern humans only began using in the late 20th century. Researchers in the construction field also acknowledge that, considering the project's complexity and high technical requirements, the pyramids of ancient Egypt are too simple compared to this. Even professional explorers have to admit that this structure looks exactly like a giant Lego garden. The stones fit together perfectly, forming intricate cracks without the need for mortar, yet they have stood towering and steadfast for thousands of years. The use of angles helps create a continuous construction flow. This is clear evidence of an extremely sophisticated stone working technique and a profound understanding of geometric principles. This indicates that the ancient land of Tiwanaku once possessed highly advanced technologies. More than anything ever discovered at this site, it is believed that the inhabitants of Tiwanaku were of diverse ethnicities, and that they themselves were the ones who collectively built this monumental structure. Among them were about 10 peculiar professions with elongated skulls. Though not numerous, they still exerted a certain influence on the historical course of this land. Wasn't this South American land originally home to many different ethnic groups? The striking difference in their appearance led many to believe that aliens had once blended in and lived among them. Almost everyone is talking about the impressive rocks found at this site. However, we have overlooked an extremely important archaeological discovery, the Fuente Magna Bowl. In 1960, while working on his family's rice field, a farmer accidentally discovered an ancient bowl. Shortly thereafter, this person sent it to the city hall in La Paz, the capital of Bolivia. This bowl is inscribed with Sumerian and pre-Sumerian cuneiform characters, and these patterns remain largely intact. Exquisitely carved human figures, along with animal motifs deeply emblematic of the local culture, are also present. Even more strangely, the bowl was also engraved with 2 types of script. One was ancient pre-Sumerian writing and the other was the local ancient Pucara language. Rosetta Stone. This book is important because it poses a profound question to the world. Could there be a connection between the Sumerians of the Middle East and the ancient inhabitants of the Andes in South America? With thousands of miles separating two distinct cultures, how did they both come to appear on a single ceramic bowl? Bolivian archaeologists also attempted to decipher the characters on the bowl and discovered that they originated from approximately 5,000 years ago. To this day, this structure still makes one wonder about the incredibly advanced and great civilizations of the past. Not only does Puma Punku astonish the world with its sophisticated and mysterious archaeological ruins, but it also keeps researchers on the edge of their seats whenever anomalous phenomena occur. This is Brian Foster, an American writer and experimental researcher. Upon visiting Puma Punku, he discovered that some of the special stone blocks there emitted a small magnetic field. This discovery makes the already mysterious structures even more peculiar. Note the electron radiation still present on some rock formations. Does there exist some supernatural force that was used to connect these massive stone blocks? Rather than using lime mortar or cement as we do today, is it possible that ancient people somehow knew how to use magnetic fields to bond these massive stone blocks together? This structure is situated at an altitude of 3,900 meters above sea level. This also explains why trees cannot grow here, making it impossible to cut them down to create rollers. This hypothesis suggests that moving the stones by rolling them on logs, as in the pyramid building process, becomes highly implausible. So how did the ancients transport such massive and heavy stone blocks? Do you all still remember the story that tells how the giant used magic to lift those 100-ton stone blocks when constructing Puma Punku? It reminds me of a special function that was once documented in the past. That is the ability of Tibetan lamas to move objects with their minds. They relied on the sound of instrumental music and chanted prayers to levitate multi-ton stone blocks into the air and then place them precisely into their intended construction positions. It perfectly matches the legendary story that the locals often tell. A Swedish doctor and PhD graduate of Oxford University named Zari directly witnessed the phenomenon created by Tibetan monks. After receiving their master's permission, the young monks led the distant traveler to a high cliff, where they could easily observe the entire process. This is the most advantageous spot to observe the monks constructing a stone staircase approximately 250 meters high. Surely, this would be an experience that Doctor would find hard to forget for the rest of his life. Two Tibetan yaks are pulling a large stone block, approximately 1 meter high and 1.5 meters long. In front of the stone slab were 6 Tibetan long horns and 13 drums. The large drums were comparable in size to the stone slabs, while the smaller ones were only about 1/5 that size. All drumheads and drumsticks are covered with silver. This instrument is fixed on a stand, arranged in a quarter circle shape. Approximately 200 monks stood in rows behind the musical instruments. Each row consisted of 8 to 10 people. Then, they began to secrete silk, spin cocoons, and initiate their own miraculous process of creation. These tools roared out their most deafening sounds, yet they could not prevent the monks from beginning their scripture recitations, the pace of which only grew faster and faster. For the first 4 minutes, absolutely nothing happened. However, as the drumbeats grew more frantic and the chanting accelerated, the stones began to tremble, shifting with a rustling sound. However, those pathless rocks hurtled swiftly into the void, floating like dandelion petals drifting in the wind. Within just 3 minutes, they had descended onto the designated construction site on the cliffside. T believed what he had witnessed with his own eyes. And I. Who made this universe? A crime scene investigation. This once again affirms that the world has recognized this superpower. Scholars and social issue analysts have relied on reality-based programs. They explain that Tibetan monks are able to do this by utilizing at least 2 types of waves: chanting waves and brainwaves. Thus, they successfully activated and harnessed zero-point energy. If the ancient Tiwanaku people had employed a similar method, the construction of Puma Punku would no longer have been an insurmountable puzzle. Another interesting point is that the Inca tribes at Tiwanaku still firmly believe in that legend. They adamantly deny that their ancestors had any connection to the construction of this ancient gate monument. The Aymara Indians told a story to a Spanish traveler who had visited the area shortly after the initial colonial invasion. As the earliest inhabitants, they possessed supernatural powers, miraculously lifting rocks from the ground. Water is carried through the air like the sound of a trumpet. Returning to the Tibetan monks from the previous story, could it be that they truly hold humanity's greatest secrets? It was through chanting and music alone that the lac made the stones levitate into the air. Although not directly manipulating with hands and feet, here they have at least applied two types of waves with different vibration frequencies. One is sound waves, the other is the brain waves of the monks. They continuously accelerated the rhythm of their chanting, and the waves of sound grew increasingly dense. Of course, this shock sent the rock flying into the air and placed it precisely into its position in the structure. This is another way to describe this strange phenomenon. This phenomenon is difficult for the field of physics to explain, as lifting and lowering such a stone slab would normally require machinery to accomplish. This is a job that requires diligence and hard work. However, if monks only rely on chanting sutras and beating wooden drums, how could that ever replace the function of a fishing rod? The only thing one can think of is that they are using another type of energy, specifically infinite zero-point energy. This is the most reasonable explanation for the story. As for why they are able to manipulate this type of energy through musical performance and chanting, or how the specific process actually occurs. Further